I love New York City history memorabilia. I have a bin of stuff that I bought on eBay from the late 19th century, from the early 20th century. I find that era fascinating from the 1860s up until the turn of the century. There's something about a lot of the old photos, glass plate negatives, cabinet cards, stereo views that seems to hold some sort of almost a magic or something whenever you're looking at the photographs that were taken in the early days of photography, and to realize that it's not just 100 years old. Some of these photos are more than 150 years old. It's something that's, when you're looking at these photographs, really grabs you, and it's really incredible. Two of the pieces of memorabilia that I love have actually been in the background of the videos I've been making over the last few days. So if I move my microphone just a little bit, these right there, see these two things? Pull my microphone back. Those are trading cards from the late 1800s. So they were out of focus in the background. You couldn't tell what they were. So I'm going to show you exactly what's going on here. This is a Golding Brothers trading card. Golding Brothers was a hat shop in New York City in the late 1800s. I looked it up in several old directories from New York City. When I was doing my documentary, The Sidewalks of New York, I would look at each year to see if the address changed, and it ended up changing a few times, and they had a few different locations. This one says, Golding Brothers, One Price Hatters, We Have the Pull, 8th Avenue at the corner of 36th Street, and 3rd Avenue at the corner of 30th Street. At the very bottom, it says Beatty and Forrest, Lithography, 44 West Broadway, New York. The back of this one actually has some words, unlike the other one, which is just blank. This one says 8th Avenue and 36th Street, 3rd Avenue and 30th Street. Golding Brothers, One Price Hatters. We have undoubtedly the largest assortment of hats, including ladies' and children's derbies, to be found in the city, which, as to quality and price, cannot be surpassed. Also a very desirable line of umbrellas, from 40 cents upward. Our gents furnishing goods department at our 8th Avenue store deserves special attention, the same consisting of a large stock of gents' fine dress shirts, custom made and to order, gloves and cardigan jackets, elegant neckwear of every description, collars, cuffs, hosiery, underwear, jewelry. Golding Brothers, 36th Street and 8th Avenue, 30th Street and 3rd Avenue, New York. So that's this one. This one's pretty cool. This one's actually in color. The other one's not. The one that's not in color looks like this. This one's also pretty cool. It shows Golding Brothers Have Got the Belt, One Price Hatters, 8th Avenue, corner 36th, 3rd Avenue, corner 30th Street, Beatty and Forrest, Lithography, 44 West Broadway, New York. And again, this one does not have anything on the back, but it does have a pretty interesting design here on the front. There is a special significance to the Golding Brothers hat shop, and it's not just that the place is 100 plus years old. The reason I have this memorabilia in particular out, it's not because it was chosen at random. I have a lot of stuff put away in a bin in a closet. This stuff is out because the Golding Brothers hat shop was significant in 1894. In that year, two men named Charles Lawlor and James W. Blake met in the hat shop. James W. Blake was working there, and they got together and they wrote The Sidewalks of New York, the famous song that a lot of people are familiar with, but they maybe don't know the origins of the story of how it came together. Charles Lawlor wrote the music and James W. Blake did the lyrics, and it became a huge success. It was sung by Lottie Gilson down in the Bowery, and it really took off because the sheet music sold like hotcakes at the time. You know, music's so different now than then that people might see The Sidewalks of New York on sheet music and kind of be like, that's not at all like anything most people that you see driving down the street today would be interested in. It has more significance than what I've already told you. And that is that the Sidewalks of New York kind of had a spike in interest back in 1894, maybe the next year, the next few years, and kind of went down to a lull from what I've read. Al Smith, a politician, decided he wanted to make that his campaign theme song. He ran for president a few times. The most significant year that he ran for president was 1928. And in that year, he won the Democratic primary. Now, I know some of you might be leaning one way or the other way these days. I think we can all agree that the Democratic and Republican parties of 1928 probably don't resemble at all the parties as they are today. So I think hopefully we can all just, cool off. No one's going to get upset that I'm mentioning Democrats or that I'm not mentioning Republicans or anything like that. We all good? So, okay. I could not find any photos of the Golding Brothers hat shop, which would have been cool. I did find a scan of a trading card that I wasn't able to get my hands on, And here's what that looks like. It kind of gives you a glimpse of what the hat shop would have looked like. It looks pretty cool. Interesting design with the hat on the corner. It would be pretty cool if a photograph did exist. I spent a long time looking for a photograph that might show whatever corner this was. Couldn't find it. There's a lot of old photography from the New York Public Library on their digital collections, the Brooklyn collections, and just lots of different museums. None of them seemed to have what I was looking for, but that's okay. But the Golding Brothers hat shop had significance because that was where the Sidewalks of New York had its origins. The song was an uplifting song at the time, and the New York Times wrote one time, "Is the Sidewalks of New York going to become the new national anthem?" Which again, can you imagine if that was brought up in today's world, today's politics? I think some people might have a problem with that. Some people might not. I've looked around to see if there's any sign of anything left from Golding Brothers. Like, is someone selling an old hat that was sold at Golding Brothers or something like that on eBay? Have not been successful. All I've found are a few more of these trading cards. I'm not going to buy any more. So if you want to go on eBay and buy some, there are probably a few that might be at a good cost. I think I've looked sometimes and they've been $85 or $100, something like that. But you might be able to find one for 20. Who knows? To cap off this story, there's a really interesting ending to the life of the man who wrote the lyrics to the Sidewalks of New York, James W. Blake. Whenever he died, Al Smith, the politician who used the Sidewalks of New York as his campaign theme song, was a pallbearer at James W. Blake's funeral. So the politician was a pallbearer and carried the casket of the man who was so kind to provide a wonderful song for his campaign. And that was one of the reasons I decided to make the Sidewalks of New York my documentary, because what a moving story to go from 1894 in this hat shop where they come up with a song that ends up being famous, and people these days in our present day have heard of the song and are still familiar with it. Maybe not so much, but they've heard of it. For that song to then move someone so much to use it for a campaign theme song, unlike a typical politician perhaps, the guy actually shows up to the funeral of the guy who wrote the lyrics and carries his casket as one of the pallbearers. That was pretty moving for me to read. So I suggest you go watch The Sidewalks of New York. It's an hour long, which is a little shorter than most documentaries. And I would like to think that it is somewhat interesting. Hopefully the first 10 minutes or so are a little slow, but the last half hour really gets into the weeds of the 1928 election with video footage. So it's not all just moving in on photos and that sort of thing. So go check that out. Hope you like it. It took me a year to make it. It took me a day to make the video you're watching right now. So hopefully the quality of the documentary is a little more than what you're seeing right now. I hope you go check it out. And yeah, Golding Brothers, go look it up with quotes around it on eBay, Golding Bros, BROS, and you might find an old Victorian era trading card. Thanks for watching.
Friday evening, March 2nd, 1894. It's ladies' night in the Anawanda Club on 2nd Avenue, the local Tammany building. Charles Murphy, later known beginning in 1903 as Tammany's Boss Murphy, is enjoying an evening as host. With beer and champagne flowing, all of those in attendance were enjoying the singing of Charles Lawlor. By this point in 1894, Lawlor had been on numerous stages, not just in New York, but around the country. Many of the men that evening were Lawlor's friends. After a lively party and plenty of drinks, he stumbled out of the bar and onto the sidewalk, roaming around town under the relatively new electric lights. As he walked the streets late in the night, the music for a tune that had been rattling around in his head for some time began to come together. He walked home that evening, traveling by foot all the way up to 114th Street and 8th Avenue, more than 100 blocks north and 6 west. Pieces of the tune's twists and turns kept coming and going in Lawlor's mind, about the jovial and wonderful childhood days of yesteryear. A simple tune, yet one that would for so many touch a nostalgic and emotional tone, reminding those who would listen of some of their fondest memories, so that for but a moment they could forget their troubles and be transported back to their youth.